Welcome to Revitalize and Replant with Mark Clifton, where we equip pastors to take their churches from declining to thriving by pointing them to a new future and a new hope. Join us weekly for encouragement and practical advice in your pastoring journey.
Welcome back to Revitalize and Replant with Mark Clifton, a podcast that's dedicated to making, we want to make a difference in your life by giving you some information and some insights and some based on Mark Clifton's experience, because he's old, and so he's incredibly experienced.
Basically, our goal is not to make your life worse by listening to this. If we can just be neutral, you can listen to the podcast and your life isn't any worse, then we call that a win.
Well,
what
when
a
people
compelling vision.
That's
for
right.
a podcast.
Kind of the approach that we take is when we ask them, what do you think about the podcast? And they shrug. We take that as a win.
That's a win, yes.
So, there's Mark Clifton. There's Mark Hallock.
Hey, guys.
I'm Dan Hurst. We have Kyle Bierman over taking care of the controls. And today we're going to talk about something that probably is a little foreign to many of you.
I don't think most of people deal with this ever.
Yeah, so this
Very rare.
this will be one of those things you want to take notes of and go, oh, I learned something today because I wasn't familiar with this. It's called church conflict.
Is there such a thing as church conflict?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Most people are. This is so foreign to them.
Right.
And what we're going to do is we're going to launch off of an article that Chris Crain from the Birmingham Baptist Association, he has written this article called 7 Causes of a Church Conflict. And the idea is that if you can discover in the early stages what these conflicts are, then that gives you a heads up and your people in your church on things that you need to be aware of and steps that you need to take so you can start dealing with some of these issues before they blow up in your face.
Right. So as soon as you discover them and you know what they are, then you call your associational missionary.
Yeah.
And he comes out and solves them for you.
Do they call them associational missionaries still?
Associational mission strategists,
Oh.
AMSs,
Yeah.
but sometimes the director of missions. And we know that because read what Dr. Crain wrote about church conflict.
Well, he just says, if you don't believe that church conflicts are common, I will let you carry my cell phone for a day. So there you go. So let's talk about some of these things. I don't know if we'll get all 7 in or not, but let's talk about some of these things that are church conflicts, and pretty much all of them exist in pretty much every church that is going through some sort of revitalization or replant. But some of them are in the early stages, and hopefully this will help you identify those things and maybe give you a few ideas on what you can do about them.
Pride, Marcus.
Pride,
Mark Halleck.
Pride's number one.
Pride goes before the fall.
That's the
Pride-
first one.
That's the first one. Pride. People have a sense of pride, self-centeredness, feelings are hurt easily, all those kinds of things. Pride comes when you value yourself above others.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the greatest workers in your church, the hardest worker in the house in Bethany was Martha.
Mm-hmm.
She was the most committed to the task, the hardest working, the most involved, but also probably the most prideful.
Probably the most prideful. Yep.
Don't you care about me?
Yeah.
And my sisters left me to do all this work? Look at all the work I'm doing.
Yes.
Whenever you have those thoughts of pride, the Holy Spirit didn't put those thoughts in your head, and they're not going to lead to the edification of the body.
Now, let's put this in modern context, because we are just getting back from a lunch break. We've done a few podcasts earlier today, and we went and looked at a few churches around in this area.
We did.
And we drove by one church, and Mark told us a story.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, actually.
That, talk about a church, and we're dealing with this very issue where Mark was, I'm not going to say you were kicked out.
But I was.
He was.
Because in a meeting of some people who were committed, they obviously love their church.
You just need to share a little. Can you share a
Well,
little?
the moderator, they had about 12 people left in the church. They didn't have a pastor. The moderator called me, said, would you and the director of missions come by? We'd like to talk to you about options for our church at our next business meeting. So I show up at the business meeting with our director of missions. I was a pastor at Warrenell. And as soon as I sat down, there was about 8 or 9 of us around a couple of tables in the church basement. And one of the older ladies said, who are you two? And I said, well, I'm Mark. I'm the pastor at Warrenell Road. I serve on the associational revitalization team. And this is your director of missions, Greg Bowl. And another old man said, well, what are you two doing here? And I said, we were invited. And the old man said, who invited you? And somehow or another, the moderator had just received the spirit of muteness and wouldn't speak. And I said, well, we were invited by the moderator. And she said, well, I know why you're here. You're here to take our church, and we're not going to let that happen. And the old man said, I move that these two men be removed from this meeting and the building. And she said, I second it. And they all said aye except the moderator, and he didn't vote at all. So I told Greg, I said, well, I guess we're leaving. Our evening is done. And so, but the thing is, he'd given me a book to give to my wife from his wife, Greg had. And I got so nervous leaving the building after being kicked out. You know, it's like a martyrdom. You know, I made a big deal out of it. You know, I was suffering for Jesus.
Yeah.
I left the book in there. So we get out to the car, and he said, where's the book my wife gave your wife? I said, man, I left it in there. He said, go back and get it. I said, dude, I'm not going back in there and getting it. So he had to crawl back in there and get the book. But, yeah, and basically we drove by that church today, and there's still about 10 or 12 people there. And that was
about it.
10 years ago when that happened.
Yep.
Just pride. We're not going to let anybody tell us what to do. This is our church.
Yep.
I own it. There's nothing gospel about that, nothing kingdom about that. But you need to identify prideful, first of all, Pastor, in your own heart, prideful traits, and then prideful traits in your members' hearts. And if that's the root of the conflict, you don't just deal with the symptom of the conflict, deal with the cause of it, which is a prideful heart, and which is what Jesus did with Martha. Martha, Martha, you're worried and troubled about many things, but, you know, Mary's the one thing that won't be taken from her. So pride.
Okay. Here's number 2. Spiritual and emotional immaturity. Spiritual and emotional. He says this, maturity helps a person understand the differences in perspective, broaden understanding. Mature people learn to disagree without being distressed. Mature people are self-aware and seek to improve their weakness. But he says this, immature individuals have not learned to avoid disputes over a person's personality or style.
Yeah.
Likewise, maturation helps a person understand the futility of fighting over things that cannot be controlled. Brothers, do not be children in your thinking. Be infants in evil, but in your thinking be mature. 1 Corinthians 14:20. And then he says this, believers must learn to think, behave, and communicate with maturity.
Right. And that means we can discuss things without getting our personalities involved and wrapped up and, as we say, taking it all personal.
Getting defensive about all kinds of things.
About it. And again, you know, we talked in a previous podcast, Mark, about shepherding and leading your people and feeding your people. Mm-hmm. And if you see this kind of immature, spiritual immaturity in your lives of your members, and you've been a pastor there for very long, before you get angry at your members, you've got to look in the mirror and say, if they're acting in that immature way toward each other, where have I failed in feeding them properly? I mean, it's so easy for us to look at our members and go, man, they are a dumpster fire.
What a wreck.
They're a wreck.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if you've just been there a couple of weeks, you've got to kind of do some of that, assessment. But, bros, if you've been there for 4 or 5 years and they're still a wreck, how you got to look at how you're leading. You got to look at how you're feeding.
This is why I would encourage you, if you're listening to us and you're going, man, that is so true of our church. A practical thing you could do, I did this years ago and it was great. I did a class on the one another's and basically approached the one another's of the New Testament and really cast vision of the kind of church that we want to be, that Jesus died for us to be. And spent a chunk of time, got most of the church, we were a little church then, 30 people, but talked about what does it mean to really love one another, to encourage one another, to pray for one another, these kinds of things, to build up one another. You've got to be proactive. It's not enough to complain. If you're a leader, you're going to try to change culture through the word as you teach and lead. So that's number 2. Here's number 3, change and inflexibility. Oh, boy.
Yeah, we've talked about this so many times, and I've come at it from so many different angles. Everybody's tired of hearing me talking about it, including everybody in this room. But people who are older have endured all the change they want to endure in their life right now. They don't want to come up with any more passwords to any more websites. They don't want to try to how to figure out load any more smart TVs to programs they want to watch. They don't want to figure out any more of the culture that they don't understand. They wake up every day and there's a new culture they can't identify. They don't recognize anything in their communities anymore. All their stores and their malls are closing, and the way they shop is closing, and all the like Joann's Fabrics is gone now. Party City's got now. Party City's not where you buy liquor; it's where you buy like paper party goods. I want to make that clear. Party City is gone now. We can list all these stores that are just gone, and stuff that I used to go to, and the way I used to shop, and the way and now it's all changing, and I get tired of the change all the time. Radio stations. Dan was in radio for years. Man, radio was the heartbeat of a community. Local radio. There isn't local radio anymore. It's that one of the best known, longest term radio disc jockeys in Kansas City was just let go the other day. Just you're done.
Is that right?
This is your last show. You're done.
Yep.
People go, what in the world? Because nobody's listening to terrestrial radio anymore, hardly. So everything's changing, right? But there's one place I can go to every week where I know what to predict, and it never changes. And there's this wonderful place called my church. And it's all just like it always is. And there's such comfort in that to somebody who's panicked about change. And then you come in and say, in order to reach the community, we've got to make these changes. And they go, no, my change capacity has reached its limit. That's what you got to deal with. And you deal with that, again, through teaching them and loving them and helping them see that they've made the church a false idol. The church, as they experience it, has become an idol to them. And they got to lay down that idol and pick up Jesus and his mission. And that's where they'll find their real joy. Their real joy is not keeping things the way they are. The real joy is walking with Jesus wherever he takes them. And
really
you've
good.
got to teach them that and show them that. But you can't resent them necessarily for not wanting change if you understand how painful change has been for them in their life.
Well, one of the things that happens too is and we kind of touched on this before we started the podcast, and just talking amongst ourselves, and that is that people don't really know what to expect. With change, what is change going
What's
to produce?
Look like?
Right.
And so the inevitably what happens in church revitalization is that the unexpected happens.
Sure.
I mean, revitalization is the unexpected happening.
Exactly.
And so your people are going to resist anything that's unexpected.
We just walked out of a building right now, a church that's being revitalized right now and being replanted by another church and doing a great job. And they went through a whole process because the building needed to be updated. And they were showing us things, said, now, we planned to do this, but when we moved this wall, we had no idea this was going to happen. And now we have to do this. Everything, nothing went as planned, right? And we know that's going to happen. But for people who are already living day to day, just scared to death of change, they don't want that. They want the establishment. They want the continuity. And yet we have to help them understand that there's really no joy in that either. The only joy comes in just trusting the Lord day by day. Whatever change comes, he'll be there ahead of it. And he already knows what he's going to do. And we can rest in that. And to just mentor them and shepherd them to realize change is not something to fear. There is no change because the sovereign Lord is ahead of us. He knows what's best for us, and we can rest in that with him.
Here's another cause of conflict. Number 4 are abuses of power. Abuses of power.
There are some people who believe this is my ministry. This is my Sunday school classroom. This is my church kitchen. I'm the church treasurer. I'm writing the checks. I'm the church secretary. I'm deciding what goes in the bulletin.
I'm the boss.
I'm the boss. I'm the janitor, and you're not getting keys to this closet. We all have these and part of it comes from older. I'm older. I got you. Older adults whose world has gotten smaller and smaller. And they have less and less influence in their world. They don't maybe have a job anymore. Their children love them, but their children don't necessarily look to them for advice like they used to. In fact, sometimes their children think they got to parent their parents, right? I mean, there's so many times now, if I'm driving someplace with our kids or grandkids, none of my kids want me to drive. Dad will drive. We don't want you driving. Well, what does that say? Well, we don't really trust Dad to drive. So, I mean, I get that.
So do I.
I know you've ridden with me, right? But here in the church, I know, man, I'm the king of this janitor closet, right? And you better not take a broom out here unless I know you've taken it. So it becomes this sort of power play that people have misplaced their joy and their purpose. It's not their ministry. It's God. It's Christ's church, and they're privileged to serve Him in it. but they own this ministry as though it's something that belongs to them.
Oh, well, I was interiming at a little church, and the church had the front door. They had one of these gorgeous old front doors, that's kind of with the arch, at the top, and it was double door, and it was gorgeous, but it was leaking real bad. I mean, when it rained, the water just ran into the auditorium, and it was a real problem. And the church voted to have the door repaired or get a new door. And the treasurer was opposed to it, and he said, "I'm not writing that check."
There you go.
And he would not write the check to do it. And they couldn't do as far as they were concerned, they couldn't do anything about it because the treasurer wouldn't write
And there are
the
people
check.
listening to this go, "That's my church." I get that.
Yeah.
Or you say, we're going to change Sunday school rooms. No, you're not. We're not leaving our classroom.
Yeah.
all
Which
that.
brings us to the next point, and that
Yes.
is politics.
Oh boy,
And
church politics.
Oh man, that's
Let's don't even talk about government politics.
Specifically church politics. And he says this, factions in the church may intentionally or unintentionally engage in political maneuvering and posturing that leads to conflict. What are some examples, guys, of church politics?
When the
that
senior
can-
adults feel like their needs are being overlooked,
Okay.
and they're the ones that pay the bills. And so they decide they're going to quit giving for a while, or they're going to withhold their giving, or they're going to designate their giving.
I think any time that anybody tries to control something, that's politics.
That's right. Or
If you want this, you got to do this for me.
right.
Yeah.
Or you've got a music leader who decides that they want to do something that maybe the pastor and the deacons don't think they should, but the music leader has a lot of influence with some of the musicians and their families, and they sort of rally around and say, okay, now we're going to get and it's all behind the scenes, and it can be in a really normative sized church, little groups of people who sort of want to dictate what goes on everywhere else, or and frankly, it's kind of like the Survivor show on TV. I don't mean to say it's in a sinful way. It can be kind of fleshly fun to sort of create alliances and see who's going to win. I see that in small
Fleshly
churches all the
fun.
time. I think this is not Survivor. We're not kicking anybody off the island. It's like, well, who's with us? I think they'd be with us, and I don't think she want. They want to remodel the kitchen. Well, I don't think we should do that. Well,
I know.
and they come up with these schemes and plans of how to not make that happen, or they have the meeting after the business meeting in the parking lot, and how we're really not going to go. Look, you think I'm nuts?
This
I'm
sounds
not
like a
nuts.
reality TV show.
And guys, sometimes in the smaller church, it's far worse. Than
Oh
that.
my,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Oh yes.
And you really have to nip it.
Yeah. So
nip
how
it in the bud.
do you address that? I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, because
No,
that's
I do
just
know.
fleshy fun is always fleshly fun. Fleshly fun.
I have no idea. Yeah, look. Again, it goes back to how are you feeding your flock? How are you dealing with them? And sometimes, dude, you just got to get in the middle of it.
Yeah,
all
that's
right?
true. That's true.
I mean, I don't want to get too deep into the woods here, but years ago we started having some young people come to Warnell for the first time, and of course we had the older ladies, and the kitchen was their purview, and we were going to have a church meal on a Sunday, and so these young mothers came. It was going to have a Mother's Day meal, and these young mothers came, and they were decorating the fellowship hall. And I was upstairs in my office trying to come up with a Mother's Day sermon. And by the way, there's no such thing because there's no Mother's Day in the Bible, but that's another story.
Oh, boy. Here
I
we
know.
go.
We'll cut all that games. Anyway, but I hear these these women yelling at each other in the church basement, literally yelling. And so I think, I want nothing to do with this. I'm not getting in the middle of this. And so I start leaving the building, and then I realize, okay, I have to. It's not going to go. It's my job. It's what God called me to do. Yeah. So I reluctantly went downstairs, and the older ladies wanted to set the tables up lengthwise and run long white tablecloths, rolls of paper they have on those. But the younger ladies wanted to set the tables up in different angles, and they had different colored tablecloths. And the older lady said, we've been here for 30 years. You can't get as many people unless you do it in the rows. And so forth. And the younger ladies were like, I don't want to be in a rest home. It looks like a nursing home when you do that. And they got really mad at each other. And what do you do at that point? Well, I just told I said, look, first of all, I want the younger ladies, you go in that room. The rest of the older ladies, you come in this room. And I went to the younger ladies first, and I prayed with them. And I said, look, these are your grandmothers. I talked to them about how this is the last thing in the church that they really can feel like they own. You're going to have to. be cautious, be gracious to them, all that. Then I went and talked to the older ladies. And I said, these are your spiritual daughters. Look, I'm not telling you it went perfectly.
Yeah.
But I had to use it as a teaching moment. And then I had to just say, look, for the sake of the gospel, stop this. And I had to make a call. And I told the younger women, I said, look, this does not mean this is not about discipleship. It's not about making the community know better. It's not about reaching people for Jesus. It's about how the tables are set up.
Yeah.
So let's let the older ladies set the tables up.
Yeah.
And then next time, and so they did, and it kind of worked out. And I realized that's a boring story, and you've all quit listening.
That's great.
In fact, Kyle got up and walked out right in the middle of that story.
Oh, it's good. That's
But you know what? That comes to the sixth point, and that is an unclear authority. In other words, who's actually
because
in charge?
if I had walked out that day,
right,
that would who knows how it would end up.
Exactly.
Sunday would have been bad.
Yeah, there needs to be a clear authority.
Now I do need to put an ending on this.
Yeah.
So there were two people that were at the. One of the ladies her name was Mildred, and she was an older lady in her 80s, and she ran the kitchen. And she was pretty upset about all this. Well, go 7-8 years later, and these women have gotten together, and they've done really well, and they've loved each other, and Mildred's getting ready to leave the church because she's going to a care center. And Mildred has no daughters, and her sons don't want her things, and she's a widow. And she only lived a few blocks from the church. And it's the last Sunday she's going to be there before she goes to a care center. And she says to me, Mark, can I have the microphone at the end of the service? And you know what? I knew Mildred, and it was not a safe call. I'm just telling you. But I felt like she'd been here for 40 years. Okay, you deserve it. So I handed her the microphone. And she could be a harsh person at times, but she just could be. Mm-hmm. But the Lord had softened her. Her heart had warmed to the gospel immensely since we came to Warnell. And she stood there with that microphone, and she said, I don't have any daughters. She said, I have a kitchen full of wonderful pots and pans and frying pans, beautiful handmade tea towels. I have 60 years of wonderful kitchen things that I've cherished. And after church today, I'm going to go home and open every one of my kitchen pantry doors. And I want you young mothers to come and take anything you want.
Wow.
And all these young women that 7 years ago were yelling at her and she was yelling at them, I mean, it's a cry fest. I mean, they come up and hug each other, and they go to her house, and they take these great old pans, these great old fryers that Mildred had for all these years. Look, if you'll get into the midst of this and do the hard work of being a pastor, wonderful things can happen out of it. But if you decide just to go to your truck that day and not get involved in this fight, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
That's good.
Which
number 7, we got number 7.
Yeah,
go to number 7.
Because this really kind of wraps everything that we're talking about up in just simply saying, well, we got an issue. It's a personality problem.
Well, different personalities.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the deal. You don't have to. Not everybody in the church is somebody you're going to want to go fishing with, or you'd want to stay and go have a great night of playing games or pickleball. I mean, there's some people that you have nothing really in common with. And there are some people that maybe personality-wise, it's just kind of grating. Yeah. But you know what? You get beyond that. And you say, look, it's not about my personality. I don't have – it's about I choose to love them. And I know one time someone said, if you can't love someone, then you love Jesus more and ask him to love them through you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you discipline yourself to do it, and you behave in such a way. And when you do that, you'll begin to see in things them you never expected to see. So what I'm saying is this. Just because there's some people that just rub us the wrong way. We're all different, for goodness sake. But get beyond that. And don't carry your personal feelings on so thin. Don't be so thin-skinned. And realize that not everybody in the church is going to be my best buddy.
Right.
But everybody in the church, I am to love one another. And I am to respect them and be good to them and kind to them, whether they are to me or not.
Let me close with a real quick story. Lou Miller. Lou Miller was my senior pastor for many, many years. Some of you may know a little bit about Lou Miller. Lou Miller was probably one of the finest Bible teachers I've ever known in my life. He'd been a missionary in Taiwan. And he'd come back to the States, and he did Bible conference work. Just a great Bible teacher. And he was one of these guys that was such a crazy personality, but he knew more about people than they knew about themselves. You know, I mean, he could pick up on personalities and identify personalities, and he was one of these guys that would say, "You, I know you. You, I know you. You guys are not going to get along together. So you go here, you go there. You know." And he would just be real confrontive with people like that.
Yeah.
But what happened was, in the process of doing that, people loved him. You know, and they accepted that. Now, if they hadn't known him,
Right.
and he had come in and said something to that effect, you can't do this, or you shouldn't do this, or you're
Right.
not the right person for this, it would have destroyed everything. I guess what I'm trying to say is Lou Miller taught me that if people don't know my personality, they're not going to accept anything that I have to say. They have to get to know you as pastor and fall in love with you.
And it's okay to tell people, you may not be the best of friends of everybody in the church.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that does not give you a license not to be gracious and kind and gentle with everybody in the
Amen.
church.
Yeah.
Well said.
All right, that wraps it up. We hope that this has been useful to help you kind of identify some of those little problems, little sores that may become abscesses if you don't address them right away. I hate to bring that picture up,
Thank
but
you for the middle picture.
But anyway, thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll make it a point to join us again.
Every time you subscribe, somebody loses an abscess.
Whoa!
So
Can we
subscribe?
We can't put that in there.
we
can we?
can.
We
Can't
can't. We can edit that out. Who is editing this?
Nobody.
Kyle, who edits this?
We
You're
don't
not
have
going to
enough-
tell me, are you?
We don't have enough money for an editor.
Oh, man. Oh, I'm so sorry, folks. We apologize, or I apologize. But see, I know his personality, and so I accept him the way he is. See you next week.
Thanks for joining us today on Revitalize and Replant. This podcast is brought to you by the North American Mission Board, where we help dying or struggling churches regain health for the glory of God and the good of their communities. If you found this conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. To learn more about becoming a replanting pastor or to explore resources about revitalization for your own church, visit churchreplanters.com.